All right. Well, speaking of bad teachers or leaders, um, recently, prominent pastor from what was it? Oops. Uh, I think is Harvest Christian Fellowship. It's kind of a mega church here in Southern California. They have um, two, I think, really like big campuses. One in Riverside and the other in Irvine. But one of the pastors there, by name is Jared Wilson, recently committed suicide, and yeah, he was someone who was, very outspoken about mental health, and even he confessed that, he too had, or he too suffers from, depression or anxiety and suicidal thoughts, and he even created a charity. Um, what was it called? Right. It's called Anthem of Hope. It was dedicated to amplifying hope for those battling brokenness, depression, anxiety, self-harm, addiction, and suicide. That's what it was. But it was, his suicide comes, mostly by surprise. I believe, from, I think the general Christian community at large, and even maybe some of people that are close to him, or at least it seems that way, because a lot of people who are close to him, were completely taken aback by his death. Even his wife sharing images of him like happily, playing with their children, the day before, he killed himself. And it's just, I mean, I don't want, I don't know whether or not, he was judged, for that last moment. I know the founder of, what was it? Yeah, what was that church name? Harvest Christian Fellowship. Greg Laurie. I know he doesn't believe that God will judge Jared Wilson for that last act, that last moment of his life. And I sincerely pray that that God doesn't. I pray that he doesn't he doesn't get punished for one moment of weakness.
Yeah, I would.
I truly pray. I truly pray for that. Because he's someone who was trying to do good, but ultimately failed. But I think,
and in this case, I don't really doubt his Christian faith. I don't, as far as like I can tell, I don't see any reason to believe that he wasn't a Christian, but
right. But I think that's as much sympathy as I'm capable of giving to him. At this point, because because here he was a man that who was supposed to he was a man seemingly called to lead others, and yet he went against he went against his words is what I'm trying to get at, because just before he died, let me see if I can bring up the text or the tweet. Right. Okay. Here it is. Yeah, I mean, just before he killed himself, he put out this tweet saying, loving Jesus doesn't cure suicidal thoughts. Loving Jesus doesn't always cure depression. Loving Jesus doesn't always cure PTSD. Loving Jesus doesn't always cure anxiety. But that doesn't mean Jesus doesn't offer us companionship and comfort. He always does.
Here's where I disagree with that. Is like, because while I don't think that everyone is like healed of things always right away by becoming a Christian, like you still have, like the up to that point, like, there's been consequences for certain decisions you made that you still have to live through, even after you become a Christian. But these things, I think eventually, like, they might not be healed right away. You might have to do a lot of wrestling and working on stuff, but they do get healed. It's eventually they get
Right.
healed. So I don't think, like, to me, that's where it's like I agree to a point, but he didn't go far enough on his points there. It's all those things that whatever it is that you might be struggling with. Like I said, it takes time, and you have to lean on God for that.
Right, and I think what the point, the missing part of that tweet is that, even if God doesn't, even though God doesn't do a miraculous healing, that doesn't mean you won't be healed.
Right.
I think that's the component that is missing from that tweet. Because he's basically saying, like, oh, just because you have Jesus in your life doesn't mean you're going to be cured of all these things. Like that, you're not preaching hope. You're preaching despair. You're saying I have the greatest power force in the universe, and yet I can't get. But it's no use against these things. That's what he's saying.
You're giving power to something. You're giving power to something that doesn't that shouldn't be given that much power, because then you're making that a god.
Right. Exactly. And and I'm and it really, and then when I saw that tweet, it really pissed me off. And then what really pissed me off was because I did because I was away for the weekend when news came of his suicide, so I really didn't get a chance to do any research. But I did do some research, and I found a sermon he gave, and it was titled "No Mess Is Too Messy." And it was kind of like the standard almost revival night kind of sermon where he's like there's nothing that you've done in your past, nothing that you do in your present, nothing that you are suffering from right now that Jesus can't overcome or cover with His grace and restore you. Right, that was the message of that sermon, and that sermon was 2 years ago, and then flash forward to just last week, and just before he killed himself, he puts out that tweet, just with nothing but despair. It's like, oh, like you could have Jesus, Jesus can be with you all the time, but you're not going to be cured of any of these things. It's like, no. It's like that, that, it's just like, it really pisses me off. It really pisses me off. And and again, I really hope that, he is not God does not judge him harshly for that last moment of his life. I truly do pray for that. But again, that's the only sympathy that he gets from me. Because,
oh, no, I'm sorry. Finish what you were saying, Andy.
Oh, no, I was just saying because him putting that out before he dies does the reputation of the church dirty. It or weakens the position of the church. It definitely definitely harms the general church community. And it's just it's just another thing that it's just another round that critics can use against more
Yeah.
mature, rooted believers.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And the other thing is, like, because we've talked about, when with suicides happen, it leaves such a black hole that, like, okay, yeah, you're done, your problems might be over essentially,
Mhm.
but he had a wife, several kids,
Well,
and he
two
had a
kids. It's
and
like now they have to
you
live.
have
Yeah, now they have to live in this world without a father,
right, and you have an entire church, a mega church, so that's what, probably a couple thousand people
at
that
least.
now, yeah, I mean, it's not like, I mean, the church isn't it's pastor per se, but like, it's all of them together, but like that leaves such a huge black hole in that church. And with the mega church, there's probably some people who are kind of like, maybe on the fence, and like they're kind of like, well, he preached about all this stuff, but then he ended up killing himself, so I guess I'm just gonna pack up my bags and go home. And who knows? Maybe like half that church ends up like walking away from the faith because of that. Or instead of committing to being a Christian.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. And that's why I hate that show, 13 Reasons Why. I it's funny because I think I've shared this story, but I remember talking to a friend. I was talking to and I was telling her about about the podcast and what we do. And I said that I told her that we've done like reviews of like movies and TV shows, and he's like, and then she asked me like, oh, what shows? And so I said, well, the only one we really, the only series that we've really done was 13 Reasons Why. And she asked me about my opinion on it, and I was honest with her. I said I absolutely hated that show because of the message that it portrayed about if you're treated horribly, you know then you can you can go out with a bang, and you could basically cause a whirlwind. You could leave a whirlwind in your wake, and it's like, and that's like the ultimate revenge payback against these people. And she was actually very surprised that I said that, because everyone else that she knows or talked to has given it glowing reviews.
That must have been pretty shocking to the system. It's like,
Yeah, no, exactly, because because she said like all of her friends and like most people that she talked to or has asked or who has watched it, they've all given it glowing reviews. Said like, oh, so great, and blah 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 blah, and it's like it's an important message, and blah blah. And I come in and like like I come in like with a sledgehammer, and it's like it sucked, it was garbage. The messaging is horrible.
here's where, like, because here's where I think, like, had they had what's her face not used, like, because yeah, she killed herself, but like she had a plan, like that her point like was to get, like, she wanted revenge on all these people, like giving, making those tapes was really fucked up.
Yeah.
Because not only like, because all these people were connected to her and they were friends with her in some way,
Mm-hmm.
but like, so her death already, like, it hits them pretty hard.
Mm-hmm.
But then you pull out these goddamn tapes, like that's really,
Right, because
that's
it's
evil.
saying like it's like this is how you contributed to my suicide.
Like, you're
It's like,
part of
you
it.
piece of shit. It's like, and again, I've said this before, and like the whole reason, the what is it? The thing that puts her over the top in her deciding to kill herself was the counselor not trying to stop her. Yeah, and at least in the first season. In the
Yeah.
first season, and it's like this guy is overworked, underpaid. He has hundreds of other students, that he has to kind of keep track of, or kind of monitor, and she goes in there and gives him very little to act upon.
And he was like, like, if there's something on, you have to tell me what's going on. Like, I
Exactly.
can't. What you're giving me, like, I can't help you with. There's no. At that point, like, you need to give details. So because there's certain things that he's like that he's wanting to hear from her, so he can actually act. Because he did care, like but he didn't
Right.
have any interest to go on, and that guy was clearly hurt by it, because like he felt, even though like, it really wasn't his fault, he felt responsible.
Right. Exactly. And especially because like that counselor was the last tape.
Yeah.
He was the last tape, and it's like this is like basically saying like it's your fault. Like you had the chance to stop this, but you didn't pursue enough. You didn't probe enough. It's like, bitch, you didn't say the words, all right? You didn't say the words that that guy raped me. This girl, whatever, or you didn't say the words. And I mean, and you can say that I'm like, oh, I'm victim blaming, or it's like, oh, how would you understand like the trauma of being raped? It's like,
That's not the point. That's not what we're talking about. Like,
exactly.
if there was no tapes, I could kind of see like why. Okay, maybe she did, like kind of, but she went out with a plan. It's like she went out with a giant bang.
Exactly. Right. As soon as she left the counselor's office, she had the tape player going, the recorder, and then she was waiting outside of his office. Like, I was like, he's not coming. He's not coming. It's like, he's still not coming. Like after like she kind of like hinted at something, like that something happened to her that was like so heinous that she couldn't talk about it. But it's like she was hoping that but it's like you didn't give him anything, and you were just like waiting for him to come and chase you down and stop you and say, no, we're going to get to the bottom of this, and da-da-da. It's like, but you didn't give him enough to act.
I've heard. I haven't seen the third season, but I heard they really jumped the shark on this one. It's gonna be.
I saw the promotional like trailer or teaser or whatever, and it's like, I mean, as much as they're trying to copy the CW, they went full CW.
Yeah. Do I want to torture myself for like a couple of hours, a few
No,
hours?
we're not doing the third season. All right, fuck that. I'm putting my foot down. We're not doing the third. We're not doing the third season. All right, we are not doing the third season. No, fuck you, dude. Fuck you.
Well, we already like felt when we did kind of do our semi review of season 2. I mean, it's like they turned that one character who was and then like he was actually like a little bit pervy, but like he was kind of normal. But then they turned him into some weird like autistic Manchurian candidate that.
Yeah. God
It's like, why did
damn.
you change his character? Like, at least, because I actually was like, I kind of wanted to see what was going to happen, and then they completely just screwed that. Ah, God, that was like, all right, that was it for me. Like, you ruined that character.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, just beyond the horrible messaging, it was just a shit show. It was really a shit show. Okay, especially and they just took it down another peg in season 2 because they made what's that the magical minority guy.
Tony.
Yeah, Tony. Like, and they gave him like anger issues, and it's like, even though before he was like kind of like this cool-headed, kind of spirit guide sort of figure in the show.
Yeah, and like the first season, he knew about the tapes, but yeah, he didn't do anything about it either. It's like
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like every one of these people like failed her, and she's like, "You guys fucked me over so bad, I'm gonna fuck you guys over." In fact, and you're saying like that's such a, and people are saying that that's such a great show, and it's so like progressive, or it's so like it's so game changing. It's like go fuck yourselves.
it's really hitting home on like mental health issues and stuff. It's like, no, it's not really.
No, it's not at
It's kind of,
all.
it's kind of it kind of shows the point. Like, and listen, I'm not blaming any people for having like mental health issues, having anxiety. They've gone through trauma. I'm not making fun of you, but like, it does
Right?
show
Yeah.
some of the self. But to me, it shows the selfishness of suicide. That it's almost glorifying the selfishness. Like, it's my truth. It's only my thing to share. It's like, well, it's like, do you want to get help, or do you want to hold on?
Yeah. Or you just want to constantly be the victim.
I mean, like, we tend to, as humans, we tend to make things. We have a worshipful mindset,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of times we end up choosing to worship the wrong thing, and
Right?
I think a lot of times people kind of worship this like victim kind of like feeling sorry for themselves attitude.
Right, because yeah, the thing that we should be worshiping is outside of ourselves, not within ourselves.
Right.
And I think that's that's the thing. That's the thing that that the devil was always trying to get after. It's like, oh, like you deserve this, or he's like this shouldn't have happened to you. So you have to like make everyone else feel as bad as you do. So make these tapes and then kill yourself, and then they'll learn.
Yeah, it's just like I said, it suicide destroys so many lives with the
Right,
people
yeah.
that
It's not just the person that dies, it's everyone else around them.
and I say this from personal experience, because my uncle, it's going on about 30 years or so now, who
Mm-hmm.
he committed suicide, and no one in my family talks about it anymore. Like it's this dark. It's still to this day a huge black hole in
Mm-hmm.
my mom's side, my mom's family,
Mm-hmm.
and it just I can't get any answers. Can't I and it's, but you can see the pain, and like people just like don't want to talk about it. It's just kind of, and I don't know, maybe that's for the best, because I mean eventually that black hole will disappear at some point,
Mm-hmm.
um I mean, even 30 years later, you still see the pain, like it just happened like yesterday. Um, and yeah, and when people are not, for in my mindset, like if I wasn't a Christian, yeah, you know what? Honestly, I don't really have a whole lot of hope in a lot of things. But the fact that I am a Christian gives me a ton of hope, because I know that even if I lost everything, I was living on the streets, all that stuff, I still have my faith, and that's honestly is enough. Um,
Mm-hmm. The words straight out of my
and
mouth.
and the
Yeah,
fact that
that's and that's the lie of this world where it's like there's nothing else after this. It's this like this here and now is all that matters. So you have to accumulate wealth. You need to you need to accumulate things because there's nothing else after this. So so you have to care about this. You have to make this you have to make everything in this world the most important thing.
um, I mean, yeah, we had in the past couple of months, we've had a couple of prominent Christian leaders kind of quote unquote leave the faith, which
Mm-hmm.
has its own scars. This to me is I think is the worst of the three of them. because I think this gives people like the kind of that message is like, well, even this guy who was, this pastor and, did all this other stuff, he killed himself. So, me as a Christian, what hope, what hope do I have? And and like I said, it's probably going to destroy that church. I'll be, it maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but it's going to leave a huge impact. It's not going to ever be the same.
Yeah, I mean, I hope, I pray that that it doesn't. I mean, as much as I'm not terribly big fan of mega churches. If they're if they're gospel centered, Jesus, gospel, and Jesus centered, and they're doing good works in His name, then I hope that something like this doesn't derail them.